Greetings, crafty friends. Welcome to another episode of Angela Shows You. Today, our craft is going to be homemade brownies. So I am actually doing an event this weekend, and I promised that I would bring brownies, and I decided rather than buy a package of brownies, I happen to have everything that I needed to make brownies here already at home. And homemade brownies, just, I personally, there's nothing wrong with a boxed brownie, but I do think that homemade brownies are just so much better. And you can also make some adjustments to the recipe if you want. And by adjustments to the recipe, I mean you can use regular sugar, you can use a sugar substitute, you can mix the two together, which is something that I actually often do. I actually like using, I use this a lot. So a lot of times when I'm making homemade cookies or brownies or whatever, I do actually mix a Splenda with regular sugar. The other thing that I do actually like to do when I'm making things homemade is I like to add other healthier enhancements to my brownies and my cookies. Last time I made cookies, I added flax seeds to them as well. Just they add a little extra nutritional benefit to them and a little extra protein. So these are the kinds of things that I like to do when I'm making my baked goods. So I like to do homemade because I can make these adjustments. Maybe this particular recipe does not call for oil, but a lot of times when I'm using a recipe that calls for oil, I will actually substitute for regular like canola oil, or I'll use either coconut oil, or sometimes I'll do part coconut oil and part applesauce. I buy unsweetened applesauce. So a lot of times, I'll use applesauce in my recipe when I'm making something homemade as well, because it keeps the moisture, but it really cuts down a lot on the calories that are in our baked goods. So that's what I mean when I say you can kind of alter some of the ingredients a little bit. Now, for all of these, it's a 1-to-1. So a cup of sugar, I would do a half a cup of my sweetener and a half a cup of sugar. I'm not altering the measurement at all. Same thing with the oil. If I'm using olive or coconut oil and applesauce, same thing, a cup. I'm not changing the measurement at all. So I've already got my oven preheating to 350 degrees. This recipe is going to go in a 350 degree oven, and you're going to cook these for about a half an hour. What you'll want to do is you will want to either use your finger and see kind of in the center, does the brownie bounce back or does your finger sink in? If your finger sinks in, you're going to want to leave them in a little bit longer. Also, you can use a toothpick, a cake tester, and you want it to not come out clean, but almost clean. So when you put a cake tester in, you don't want raw dough to be on it. But if you get a little bit of, just a little bit, or a little bit of crumbles, that's okay. And keep in mind that when you take your pan of brownies out of the oven, they are going to continue to cook for a few more minutes. So it's okay if they're slightly undercooked, knowing that they are going to keep cooking for a couple more minutes. 3 to 4 minutes probably is how much longer they're going to keep cooking as they cool down, because they've been in a 350-degree oven for a half an hour. So they are going to continue. All that heat is going to keep cooking your baked good for a few more minutes, and then it'll just naturally start to cool down after a few minutes. So I like to take them out just when they're like just done cooking. And you can tell either by looking at them, but do definitely either with your finger. If you put your finger on it and it bounces back up, you're good. If your finger sinks in, or you end up with batter on your finger, then of course they're not done yet. But about a half an hour is when you want to start looking for doneness. It's nice to start looking before you think that they're going to be done, because you can always leave your baked good in for 2 or 3 more minutes. But once they're cooked, all they're going to do now is overcook. So always start looking, anything that you're cooking, always start looking at the minimum amount of time that a recipe calls for and go from there, because you can continue cooking. You know that when you take the pan out, they're going to cook for another, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So they'll be a perfect done. Where if a recipe says 25 to 30 minutes and you take them, you look at 30 minutes, they could be done or overdone, especially knowing that you're going to have that kind of keep cooking going on after you take them out. So always start looking at the lower end, low to middle. If it's 25 to 30 minutes, 25, 26 minutes, look and see, how are we looking? Put your finger in, put a toothpick, a cake tester, something in. Okay, so what I already did was I melted a cup of butter. For this recipe, I am actually going to use a full-size 9x13 pan. So I've got the pan out. I haven't done anything to the pan yet. Right before I'm ready to put the batter in the pan, we will give it a quick spritz of nonstick cooking, but I don't like to do that too far ahead of when I'm going to pour my batter in for what I'm making. So I'm going to use this to give my everything that's going to be in my dish a stir. Now I'm going to the melted butter, we are going to put in flour. So this is a half a cup. I want 1 cup of flour, so I've got a half a cup, 1 cup of flour. And I just spilled it all over the counter. All right, and then I am going to just give it a little bit of a stir. We don't want to over stir our ingredients, but I do like to just kind of give things a little bit of a mix as I put them in. We're going to put in a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. I'm sorry, a 1/2 teaspoon. I'm actually doubling this recipe. So if you want to use like an 8x8 pan, you'll do, this will be in half. So it would be a 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm doubling the recipe, and I will of course put the recipe in. I'm gonna do just, I'm using salted butter, so I'm gonna just do a few twists of sea salt. If you're using unsalted butter, you'll want a 1/2 teaspoon of salt as well. But since I used salted butter, I'm just using a little bit of salt to bring out the chocolate, but not a whole lot. Okay, we want vanilla. We're going to use 2 teaspoons of vanilla. 1, 2. We're going to put 4 eggs in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll give that just a little stir again. Okay. Cocoa. We want 2/3. So I've got 1/3, 1/3. And you know, you can, I happen to have the Nestle one, but of course the Hershey one is just as good as well. You could also use the they also have a special dark, so that's a really good option to use as well. Okay, so we have one more thing that we want to add in here, and that is sugar. So I am going to use some regular sugar and that and my sugar substitute here. Oops. And I don't have quite enough. So it was a 1 cup of sugar. All right. So now I'm just gonna stir this up a little bit. And this is going to be thick. Of course, we want that. We want it to be nice and thick. All right, there we go. Okay. And now the only other thing that I'm going to add, and you don't have to add, but why not, is some extra chocolate chips. You can also go ahead and add nuts as well. I'm going to just add a 1/2 cup of chocolate chips to I'm I'm not going to put any nuts in this because I don't know if the people that I'm sharing this with like nuts or not, so I'm going to leave them out. You could also make this a really decadent recipe by adding in, you could swirl in some peanut butter. What you would do if you wanted to add some peanut butter in is I would spread my batter out into the pan, and then I would take a few tablespoons of peanut butter, plop it in, and then just kind of swirl the peanut butter around in there. So what I'm going to do now is just grab the nonstick spray. And we're going to just give the pan spritz. And then I'm just going to and we're going to just spread the batter around in the pan. I'm just trying to keep the batter even, that's all, as I squish it around in the pan. All right, so here we go. We've got our batter in our pan. So we're going to just put this in the 350-degree oven for about a half an hour, and then I will check it. And the finished product will be the thumbnail photo, but that's the basics. I said we'll either use our finger or we'll do a cake tester or something, test for the doneness in about a half an hour, and go from there. So I hope that you enjoy this recipe. They're delicious, and if you do the recipe, I hope that you'll leave a comment in the comment section and let me know what you think of these delicious homemade fudge brownies. See you next time.